Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I offer an update on the New York State criminal case against Donald Trump? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, including the timeline of the alleged crime, then offer my analysis. On April 4, 2023, former President Donald Trump made his way to a Manhattan courtroom where he pleaded not guilty to 34 felony counts. Every single count was for the exact same Class E felony, falsifying business records in the first degree. Class E is the lowest class of felony in New York and has a maximum penalty of 4 years in prison. This charge is often prosecuted as a misdemeanor, but it can be elevated to a felony. In order to achieve this elevation, the falsification must have been done with the intent to commit or conceal another crime. Typically, that crime is charged at the same time as the business record charge, but that did not happen in this case. Essentially, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg is accusing Donald Trump of engaging in a scheme to illegally influence the 2016 presidential election. The 34 alleged business record falsifications were part of that effort. Prosecutors outlined the alleged scheme in a 13-page statement of facts. Here's a summary of that document. Again, these are only allegations. Donald Trump maintains the presumption of innocence and has denied these accusations. In 2015, Donald Trump's attorney, Michael Cohen, entered into an agreement with American Media Incorporated, or AMI, which owned the National Enquirer tabloid, as well as other publications. AMI agreed to buy negative stories about Donald Trump, but never publish them. This is a tactic referred to as catch and kill. It prevents stories from being made public, including embarrassing stories. Throughout the 2016 presidential campaign, AMI made efforts to catch and kill stories related to Donald Trump. They agreed to pay $30,000 to a doorman at Trump Tower, who they believed was trying to sell a story about Donald allegedly having a child out of wedlock, and they agreed to pay a Playboy model named Karen McDougal $150,000 for her story. She claimed to have an affair with Donald Trump. In October 2016, Michael Cohen agreed to pay $130,000 to an adult film actress who went by the name Stormy Daniels. She claimed to have a sexual encounter with Donald Trump in 2006 when they were attending a celebrity golf tournament. In 2018, Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to a few offenses, including federal campaign finance violations. The 34 felony business record falsification counts are only connected to the Stormy Daniels payoff. Donald Trump reimbursed Michael Cohen for the payment to Stormy Daniels after becoming president in 2017 by writing Michael checks over the course of a year. In his company records, Donald recorded the checks as legal fees, as if Michael was providing him legal services while Donald was serving as president. Alvin Bragg declared that Donald was making false statements by recording the entries in this way. The case has elicited a variety of reactions from the public. Some people believe that Donald Trump is guilty and should go to prison for 136 years. That would be the maximum penalty, 34 times 4. Other people believe that this is a political prosecution. Donald Trump was targeted because he is once again running for president. They believe that he is completely innocent. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. As I mentioned, in order for the falsifying business records charge to be prosecuted as a felony, it must be done with the intent of committing or concealing another crime. This crime does not appear in the indictment, although Alvin Bragg has dropped some hints about 3 potential crimes. The first crime, the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels, exceeds the federal cap on campaign contributions. This, of course, would mean that Alvin would have to prove that Donald committed a federal crime, even though Alvin cannot prosecute Donald for a federal crime. The New York State law about falsifying business records does not indicate that the other crime must be a state law offense. So this strategy could succeed, although this is an untested legal theory. It has never been accepted or rejected in New York before. The second crime, there's a law in the state of New York that makes it illegal to conspire to promote a candidacy by unlawful means. The challenge here is that Donald Trump was running a federal campaign. Why would somebody in a federal race have to abide by a New York state law? The third crime that Alvin mentioned was Donald may have mischaracterized, for tax purposes, the true nature of the payment. This is good for Alvin because he is talking about a New York state law, but it's not clear how Donald's behavior would have broken tax laws. Item number 2, under most circumstances, paying someone to keep quiet is not a crime. If Donald paid Stormy because he wanted to keep the embarrassing story from his family, this could undermine the state's case. It's very difficult to prove what a person was thinking when they made a payment. The timing of the payment makes it look like Donald was trying to hide it for the presidential race, but there are a lot of reasons to hide an embarrassing encounter. I imagine that many people who had encounters with Stormy Daniels would want to keep them a secret. Item number 3, the statute of limitations is going to be another problem for the state. In the state of New York, the statute of limitations for a non-violent felony is 5 years. The most recent alleged offense in the indictment occurred on December 5, 2017, which is over 5 years ago. If the charges get dropped down to misdemeanors, then the limit is 2 years. The state is probably going to argue that the clock can be stopped when a defendant is out of the state. This is not a terrible argument, and there have been other cases where this has been done, but it's one more hurdle for the state to overcome. It seems strange that Alvin waited past the 5-year mark to present his case to a grand jury. He was just inviting another problem that should have been completely avoidable. Item number 4, if there is a conviction in this case, what would be the likely sentence? I imagine it would be probation. Donald will probably not serve any time in jail. Even though the charges are technically felonies, and there are 34 of them, this is not really a jail time case. These are non-violent record-keeping offenses. It's rare to see people demonstrating in the streets about the falsification of business records. It's just not the type of crime where people advocate for harsher punishment, like DUI offenses or something like that. I've never seen a person on a street corner being interviewed by the media saying something like, "This town has too many murders. The drug dealers are everywhere. But what really bothers me is the falsification of business records. It's out of control. Expense categories are scattered everywhere." Another problem here is that there is no clear victim who people can identify with. I can't imagine someone lamenting about a friend who was the victim of this crime by saying, "I remember when Tommy was optimistic and joyful, but he's not the same happy-go-lucky kid he was before his business records were falsified." Item number 5 is my opinion about these charges. Is this a valid case, a bad case, a political prosecution, or something else? There is no way to know for sure, but the hide-and-seek game that Alvin is playing with the other charge doesn't inspire a lot of confidence in his case. A poll that was taken right after the arraignment indicated that 76% of Americans believe that the charges are at least partially politically motivated. What I find interesting is that depending on the poll, somewhere between 45 and 60% of Americans believe Donald Trump should be prosecuted. That means that there are a large number of people who don't really care if it's a political prosecution or not. They just want it to happen. In my opinion, Alvin Bragg looked for any way he possibly could to embarrass Donald Trump. He found a technicality that he was able to exploit. Perhaps Alvin believes that Donald deserves to be prosecuted, whether he's guilty or not. Another possibility is that Alvin is hoping that one of the other investigations against Donald Trump will be strong enough to support charges, but he was afraid that other prosecutors would not want to be responsible for breaking tradition and filing charges against a former president. Alvin Bragg was willing to make the bold move and deal with the consequences to pave the way for someone else to file legitimate charges. Item number 6. This is the first time in U.S. history a former president has been indicted for a crime. What does this mean for the future? I don't have a problem with a former president being indicted for a crime as long as a normal citizen would have been indicted under the same circumstances. It doesn't seem like that's the case here. I think building a flimsy case is what sets the bad precedent, more so than simply indicting a former president. This prosecution ushers in a new era of immaturity and vindictiveness. Now the gloves are off. There are no more politicians acting anything like adults. Although, to be fair, acting like adults was never their strong suit. Early in the history of the United States, politicians vigorously fought with one another. They were extremely impolite at times. But one could argue that they respected the boundaries of the system. They kept the fight in the ring. They realized that ultimately, in order to get anything done for the people who elected them, they had to find common ground. There were generations of politicians who understood how to disagree with each other productively. They had an appreciation for how fragile a democracy is, and a respect for the idea that a politician was elected by the people to carry out the will of the people. That respect is now gone. The civility has been eradicated. The United States has entered into an uncultured and reckless age. It's like the cancel culture has now spread to all levels. It's permeated society with its nonsensical tactics. Figuratively speaking, today it's Donald Trump being indicted. Tomorrow it's another Republican. A year from now it's a Democrat. The pendulum of power swings back and forth. Whoever has the power is now going to use it without constraint. Item number 7. Did Donald Trump bring this on himself? Is he really to blame for provoking this political prosecution? One could argue that Donald Trump's petty, grandiose, and arrogant behavior brought out the worst in his rivals. He was so unpleasant and unscrupulous that people thought they had to deviate from tradition in order to fight him. In a sense, he dragged everybody into the mud with him. I think there may be some truth to this argument. Maybe Donald Trump is to blame. But in another sense, he exposed the impulsivity and immaturity of his opponents. Perhaps unknowingly, Donald Trump proved that other politicians are just as corrupt as he is. Item number 8. How will these charges against Donald Trump affect him personally and affect his campaign? I don't think that Donald Trump has any insight or empathy. He will never be able to appreciate how much he is disliked by his detractors. For that matter, he will never truly understand how much he is appreciated by his supporters. For Donald Trump, it's all about winning and having power. He is self-centered. I don't think that Donald Trump is ever going to change. All he can do is talk about the latest circumstance, and these charges certainly qualify as big news. In a time when Americans want to hear a presidential candidate talking about the economy and certain social issues, Donald Trump is going to continue to talk about the charges against him. He may be able to gain some mileage from these charges, especially if he beats them, but I don't think he can truly capitalize on this occurrence. Donald really doesn't understand what happened. The only thing he can do is talk about himself. It's the one area where he truly shines. Those are my thoughts about the case against Donald Trump. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.